Bhalam fáiltear le a chur rih an ara breisiidechas agus ardidechas taide nuaíochta agus óíochta Simon Harris atá going ag an ggóáil inniu. Agus caithí mé ráid os go bhfuil sé bhadnaí séasca an tidal sin a rá spéirle. A ré an nos, is mór a going go bhfuil tú tar éis an tám a chur fáil chun bheith inar deanta a ara. Tá míad buíoch as de chuid takeíochta agus tá súlagam go raci an plé le ling na chóála chun tarbh dit. Minister, you are very welcome to the 2023 Annual Congress of the TUI. While I won't keep you long, I regret to say that having monitored the pace of progress over the past year on behalf of our colleagues working in further and higher education, it is with a note of sincere disappointment that I begin this reflection. Let me tell you why. As you all know, and as you, Minister, have acknowledged, further education has been described as the Cinderella of the education system. When you became the Minister, there was an air of genuine hope and expectation that finally we had our Prince Charming, our knight in shining armour, a person at the helm who would champion the worthy and important cause of further education. Unfortunately, Minister, despite the good intentions and the promises, the tweets, the TikToks, much work remains to be done. Many of the promises remain unfulfilled, and those working in the sector still feel that they have been left behind, professionally disrespected, struggling to do what is right for all those who need them. And thank you sincerely, Minister, for your announcement regarding our adult education tutors. But Minister, why has it taken so long to ensure that those who look after the most marginalised in society actually have terms and conditions and a proper incremental salary scale? Certainly, to begin with, when you came here, you gave them hope. Indeed, at Congress last year, you assured them an offer was on the way. But today, right now, despite what you've just announced, they continue to suffer the same Cinderella conditions as they did when the Labour Court recommendation was issued in 2020. They have been treated appallingly, dismissed, acknowledged in rhetoric alone. Their terms and conditions are far from those of a fairy tale. Last July, we were promised the offer from your department. Then we were told that it's not your department holding things up, but rather the Department of Public Expenditure and Form. It's simply not good enough. The claim was encompassed under a national collective agreement by the chairman's note in 2016, almost 7 years ago. It's not good enough that in the interim, these members have had to sign on during centre closures. It's not good enough that Deeper was treating this as a cost-increasing claim when it predates building momentum. And it's not good enough, Minister, that despite the TUI following all the relevant industrial relations fora and legislation and mechanisms available to us, we had to wait until today to get the green light. Thank you for it, but and Minister, we haven't seen the detail yet. Similarly, some of those adult education tutors who have done tremendous work to facilitate and accommodate Ukrainian refugees were being told that they're not entitled to the public sector pay increases that were awarded under building momentum, and that in order to fix this, they had to wait until the miraculous, the elusive offer was finally sanctioned. Insult added to injury. I mean, seriously, Minister, that really was a cheap shot. It appears to me that the only thing really building momentum here is the frustration of our members. And as the president of this union, I can tell you it's making a beeline in your direction. Minister, I genuinely do thank you for your commitment and for saying that you are going to act upon this, but we really do regret the slow pace. Another group who is thwarted by bureaucracy are our Youth Reach members. Minister, you know these people. You know what they do. You have visited their workplaces and have volubly praised their commitment as you did the rounds. More importantly, you promised to do the right thing by them, to be their knight errant. Yet despite it all, this group is still waiting for their incremental credit circular. What's the hold up here? How long do they have to wait, and when does the clock strike 12 for them? So, while we're remaining in the realm of fairyland, what about the FET College of the Future? The name alone suggests impossibility, something that can never be obtained or achieved. One wonders who dreams up these concepts, and do they realise the implications for our members? Our diligent, professional, highly skilled members in the sector are deeply concerned about what the FET College of the Future will mean for them. They are concerned because they're operating in a vacuum of spin and rumour. Minister, tell us what it is you want. Consult us, work with us, and we'll engage positively and professionally, but to continue to operate without us, without consultation, and without our input will simply result in a building which houses and espouses great things but signifies nothing. The patience of our members is not inexhaustible. We have trusted to negotiation and process, but in return have encountered prevarication, opportunism, and exclusion. If our reasonable demands for inclusion, consultation, and agreement are not met, we will be forced to, and have the capacity to, take decisive industrial action. Furthermore, Minister, and to dispel any doubt or confusion, teachers who work in the post-leaving certificate colleges are teachers, with teachers' terms and conditions represented by us at the Teachers' Conciliation Council, protected by a range of collective agreements. We will not have their terms or conditions undermined, or their right to be represented by the TUI diminished. We will not have Solace or any other agency or person unilaterally impose changes in these terms and conditions. Take that road. Take that road, Minister, and trouble will ensue. Finally, from an FE perspective, can someone please wave their magic wand and conjure up some sorely needed coherence and clarity regarding the organisation and design process of the ETB sector? I spent Thursday mornings for 3 months engaging with the management side that claims to want to initiate change, transform the landscape and redesign the sector. Yet here I am, months later, none the wiser, nothing positive to report. As the mood of our members in the sector, from our ALOs to AEOs, CEFs and BTI, and many, many more, drifts from expectation to cynicism, this must be addressed, Minister. And similarly, the game changer, as you call it, which is the united tertiary sector, while laudable in intent, needs to be supplemented with actions on the ground. Further progression to higher education is not a new concept. Minister, in my hometown 30 years ago, post-primary and further education were in the same building, and the IT, as it was called then, was 100 metres away, exit, turn left. It was on the same campus. So for those of us engaged in the sector, what we need to see are actions, not simply policy statements. This story needs an ending, Minister, and a happy one. Unfortunately, and in a similar vein, what of my colleagues in higher education? The year didn't begin well, Minister. Our members found themselves embroiled in the sectoral bargaining process that came with building momentum. Sectoral bargaining, as we told you last year, is a flawed process whereby our members use their own money to solve long-standing issues caused not by them, but government decisions. How is this reasonable, expecting members to pay for the mistakes made by your government and predecessor governments? We acknowledge the support offered by your department in recent months, but the process must be concluded without delay. We do not want to hear that individual TUs or IOTs and telling us that they don't have the time or the resources to implement our members paying for their own colleagues' legitimate claims. Our members have had enough of delays in the sectoral bargaining process. In fact, Minister, they've had enough of the sectoral bargaining process, full stop. Conclude it now and support its conclusion, please. And on a more positive note, as you've said yourself, 5 TUs are established, 5 entities that are a realisation of what we can achieve when we work together for our students, our members and our nation. Remember, Minister, it is the TUI who put the TU in Technological University. Without us, they wouldn't exist at all. The TUs bring a vision for the future into the context of education, regionally based centres of excellence. However, Minister, you can have all the strategic plans in the world, but if our TUs don't have the funding that they need to do their jobs, then plans are just targets that can never be achieved. Minister, you've told us you're going to end precarious employment, but we have HPALs who have been waiting 10 years for a conversion process. You talk about the researchers, but will they have to wait as long as our adult education tutors for deeper to sanction this pension scheme? And all the while, we have a TU organisation and design process that is paying consultants to do its thinking while our members are suffering. The OECD report, Education at a Glance, highlighted the deficit in funding. The most damning metric in the report shows that of all the countries for which figures are provided, none spends a lower proportion of national wealth on education than Ireland's at 2.9%. In third level colleges, the ratio of students to teaching staff in Ireland now stands at 22:1. So, Minister, yes, it absolutely does need to be reduced because it is vastly higher than the respective OECD and European averages of 15 and 14:1. This is leading to crowded halls, lecture halls, less time for tutorials and other vital work. It is a legacy of the ongoing political refusal to address the sector's funding crisis, and a generation of students is losing out as a result. This, compounded by the workload faced by lecturers, was put to you last year at Congress. Lecturers who are involved in 16, 18 hours teaching cannot sustain the load. They cannot be researchers, lecturers, technicians, assessors and programme devisers all at the same time. You acknowledged this last year. You did acknowledge this last year and have referenced it again by telling us you would introduce another groundbreaking initiative, an academic contract that ensures staff are facilitated and encouraged and indeed rewarded for the many and varying roles they fulfil. I think we actually used the same lines there. A year later, they're still waiting. The OECD review of academic contracts has issued. The report has many positives and some negatives, but ultimately will require 2 things: funding and consultation. When you get the funding, Minister, we'll be here ready to consult. That funding must do justice to the sector. It must do justice to our professional practitioners, and it must do justice to our students. And Minister, you know all about justice, don't you? You have a dual brief at the moment, Minister, so you might understand more fully where our lecturers are coming from. I mean, Minister, this is a government who repeatedly insists that our members do more for less in an underfunded education sector. And what about DKIT and IADT? Where do they go now, Minister? I must thank you on behalf of the TUI for meeting our branch officers and listening to their justifiable concerns. These people, our colleagues, deserve a future. They deserve a planned merger with one of the 5 TUs. They deserve to know where their careers are heading, and they deserve a voice and input into their own future. They have given years of outstanding service to their students and their communities. They, Minister, offer the real and focused expertise that can drive and grow their colleges. Minister, DKIT and IADT want to go to the ball as well. You must listen to them and facilitate their attendance. So right now, we have 5 TUs and 2 IOTs. Nobody doubts that in the absence of TU status, the days of the IOT are numbered, their funding status impaired, and the regions they serve disadvantaged. The IOT sector has traditionally, if entirely incorrectly, been perceived as a lesser entity to the traditional universities, dwarfed by their size, their legacy reputations, and their funding. But the reality, as you know, Minister, is that our members, people here in front of you, take some of the brightest and the best and some of the most disadvantaged and allow them to progress, allow them to utilise their abilities to the full, to level 8 degrees and facilitate their movement through academia to PhD level. The sector wants coherence, leadership informed by an understanding of how our nation can move towards greater equality of educational opportunity and outcome. You can provide that leadership. You appear to have listened to our members who advocate for and work with our SEN and AEN students. You have made welcome and much needed announcements in that regard here today, Minister. But let's not forget the contents of the most recent AHEAD report. There's been a 45% increase in the number of students per disability support staff members in the last 8 years. Resourcing has not kept pace with the growing number of students accessing the services. In other words, Minister, what you are going to do will plug the gap for a while, but as it currently stands, there is an 85% increase in the number of students per learning support staff members, and that's not good enough either. I do thank you for the commitment to SEN and AEN, but I am also certain that we need you to deliver more staff, more supports, and more funding in order that we can follow through. Something that might be easily achievable for you, Minister, though, would be to speak to whomever it is who devises and creates the terms of reference for our industrial relations fora mechanisms, and to require that those fora be streamlined and made fit for purpose. We now have the NNF, the IOTIR Forum, HESOG, PSAG, and who knows what's next. Just because it's been given an acronym does not mean it works. Minister, sort it out. Honestly, we spent a year trying to figure out who holds which role and why. There's really no need to overcomplicate things with layers of bureaucracy. We're straight-talking, uncomplicated people who really want to see the sector progress in the right direction. And on that note, Minister, I must remind you that the theme for this year's Congress is recruit, retain and reclaim. The members of the TUI at further education and higher education are not shielded from the cost of living crisis. They are not cosseted from the realities of the lack of childcare provision or the lack of decent, affordable public health system. But most importantly, they are not protected against the reality of the prospect of being evicted from their homes, their place to live, wherever that may be. We cannot have teachers, tutors or lecturers in towns or cities on low contracts or without an incremental salary scale scrambling to find somewhere to live. We cannot have young people or older people queuing for hours with references to pay extortionate rents. We cannot sustain educational provision at any level when the state cannot provide homes for its educators, its students or its people. This crisis, Minister, this emergency impacts on every facet of life. It was predictable, projectable and preventable, and impacts on everything all of our members do. It is a wider crisis, Minister, but it cannot be omitted from our speeches today. And finally, Minister, I'm sure everyone's delighted. I'm sure people thought I had forgotten about our apprenticeship sector, but unlike the aforementioned OECD report, which barely acknowledges their existence, I saved the best for last. My friends and colleagues in craft, trade, business, media, law and retail apprenticeships need to know what the action plan for apprenticeships and the consortia-based model means for them. They need, through the TUI, to be fully consulted and acknowledged as stakeholders. These, after all, are the people who will tackle even climate and environmental change in our country and devise the technologies needed to transform our landscape. These are the people who make the ordinary extraordinary, who create possibilities and drive skills that sustain and build the future. Look at the intense and amazing spectacle that is World Skills Ireland, Minister. Look at the possibilities. Dream the impossible dream. And maybe, just maybe, I and my colleagues will start to believe in fairy tales again. Míle buíochas.